Oh, from Champlain. Good to see you. Nice to see you, Jeff. Oh, terrific. Good to see you. Ah, great. Good to see you. Nice to see you again. Hello, everybody. Hi, Jim. How are you? Hey, how are you? Good to see you. Pleasure.
Protect us.
Yeah, no problem. Hugs everywhere. Hi, how are you? Good to see you. Yes, nice to see you. Yes, nice to see you. Is this your sister? Okay, say hello for me. Oh, good old Jim. Did you work for him? Glenn, but Jim did, what area did Jim represent? Good to see you. Glenn represented Glens Falls. Warren County. Right. Gary, are you going to introduce it? I don't know which. So is your district just
Okay, let us get started. I want to acknowledge some of our officials who are with us here today. Starting with my boss, Chairman of the Plattsburgh North Country Chamber of Commerce, John Van Natten. Always got there first. Our good Assemblywoman, Janet Dupree. Thanks for being with us, Jan. From the Clinton County Legislature today, we have Judy Langley, Sam Trombley, and Sarah Rowden. Thank you all for being with us. Supervisor of the Town of Champlain, Larry Markham. Mayor of the Village of Rouses Point, and after today, once again, going to be the happiest mayor in the state of New York, George Rivers. Mayor of the Village of Champlain, Jeff Moore. Mayor of the City of Plattsburgh, John Casper's out. John, thank you for joining us.
Good to see you. Thank you. Great to be here, Mayor. Thanks.
Here representing our good state senator, Betty Little, Paul Maroon. Paul, thank you for being with us. And the regional representative for Tricia Smith, the State Labor Commissioner, Cliff Donaldson. Cliff, thank you for being here for the commissioner. I'm going to make this very brief because our friend is here with us so often, and we have stated so many accolades in the past that we can now just kind of say ditto. You know? He's still doing good stuff. California may have the Terminator, now the Governator, but we've got the Stimulator. He's been helping us stimulate good things here in the North Country for the last decade now. At the border, and at the airport, and in economic development ventures such as Akrimax that we'll be making an announcement on in a short bit. And it just goes on and on and on. And he was saying, it really says it all. He was saying to Joe and Len and the guys from Akrimax just a few minutes ago out here to call him any time that he's not a bank. Well, good thing you're not a bank. But what he means is that, you know, there's not some, you know, people come to me once a year and after that, you know, don't ask me too much. He likes being asked to do things. And that's what makes him a remarkable public servant, because he's not in it making some calculation that, you know, if you only got 80,000 people up there, how much time am I going to spend with those folks? They've got good stuff to do, it's doable, I can help with it, I want to do it. And that's what he does time and time again. And we're going to have him up here twice. Today's a twofer. He's not here to make one announcement, but to make two separate announcements. And so we're going to have him up first to make one in relation to the stimulus bill. It's very important to Clinton County, and I would suggest to property taxpayers here in the North Country as well. Our members have said consistently over the last 2 years that number one concern is property taxes. And with all that's happening with state finances, you know, in shortfall, you know, that concern has certainly been heightened. And what he's going to share with us today is at least part of the fix to at least keep things from getting worse as they would have without the assistance that he's helped deliver to the state of New York and to Clinton County. And we're going to have the county respond to that, and then we're going to have him back up to make a separate announcement. So stay after the first one, because there's another one coming right after that. My very great pleasure, as always, to introduce our very, very good friend, Chuck Schumer.
to be here. I want to thank everyone for coming out, our legislators and our executives and so many of the others who are here today, because that's what the North Country is all about. People really care and look out for one another, and whenever I come here, I just get a great reception, and I thank you for that. Just a word about Gary Douglas. This is in the last week, in different parts of the state, 2 different people who were active in either IDAs or chambers or economic development spoke of Gary Douglas and what a great job he does and how he's sort of the envy of the whole state. So you're lucky to have him, and make sure you keep him.
Should be on my committee this year for review.
Yes.
I'll call.
Salary review. Anyway, it's great to be here. It's good to be back. I'll tell you a little. I always try to tell a story. So this one's dedicated to my father. I don't think I've told it up here. My dad struggled his whole life. He was an exterminator. He hated his job. My sister once sent him a Father's Day card that said, "Dad, we're the only family that associates the smell of DDT with love." I don't know if it worked for the chemicals, but seriously, he had a small little business. That's why I have such empathy for small business people. It only had 4 people, him and 3 workers. But he would pace the floor Sunday nights, 2 a.m. here, my brother, sister, and I were all here. And he hated going to work. But he sold his little business, or just no one bought it. But he retired from his little business, and at age 72, he sort of got happy. You know, he took up golf. He had never had a golf club in his hands before. And my mom and my brother is the financially successful Schumer, and they bought him a little house in Florida, so every winter they go down there. But they don't have that much to do. They play golf, and many of their friends have passed. So anyway, to keep their time going, they enrolled. Florida Atlantic University allows all senior citizens to enroll in any course for free. So my parents enrolled in a course called Humor. And every Thursday afternoon, they drive over to Florida Atlantic University to the course called Humor. And what is it? Some erstwhile comedian who never made it in the Catskills gets up and tells jokes for 40 minutes. It's a different one each week. My dad never went to college. He said, "Gee, college is pretty easy." But in any case, they call me with their favorite joke each week. So this is one of my favorites. Mrs. Walters is brought before the judge. And and the judge says, "Yes, you're back, Mrs. Walters." "Yes, Your Honor, I am." And he's exasperated. "What did you steal this time, Mrs. Walters?" "Your Honor, I stole a can of peaches from the supermarket down the road." The judge says, "Mrs. Walters, look, I know you're a kleptomaniac, and I know kleptomania is an illness. So I know you can't help yourself stealing things like this. And I know you can easily afford a can of peaches." But he says, "You know, Mrs. Walters, this is the 17th time you've been brought before me for shoplifting this year, and it's only March. I'm going to have to sentence you to some time in jail. Now, how many peaches were in the can, Mrs. Walters?" "Your Honor, there were 4 peaches in the can." He says, "Well, then I have no choice. I'm going to have to sentence you to 4 nights in jail, 1 for each peach." He's about to bang the gavel and pronounce sentence when a gentleman in the middle of the courtroom gets up all excited. He goes, Your Honor, may it please the court. She also stole a can of peas." Her husband. It was her husband. I blew it. Her husband who gets up all excited. So, if you're ever retired, enroll with Florida Atlantic University. Anyway, I'm glad to be here, and I'm glad to see we have some of our legislators here, including Chairman Langley and all of you, because we do have some good news from this stimulus package that directly affects the North Country and Clinton and Franklin and Essex counties. First, let me talk a little bit about this stimulus package. Our economy, our national American economy, is in the worst shape that it's been in since the Great Depression. 600,000 jobs lost last month, 1.6 million in the last 3-4 months. And when that happens, of course, it hurts the families. It also hurts the whole economy. When people are out of work, they have less money to spend, fewer people buy things, and more people get laid off. It's called, what the economists really worry about is something called a deflationary spiral, which means things keep going worse and worse and worse. Prices go down, you'd think that would be good, but it's not, because when the prices go down, the manufacturers, the service businesses lay off more people because they have fewer revenues. There's less money out there, prices go down further. The last time we had a deflationary spiral was in Great Depression. And the problem with it is that once you get into something like that, no economist knows how to get out. So President Obama, in my opinion, correctly said, we need to give the economy a big jolt. And he put together this stimulus package, and it basically has 4 parts. Really 3 parts, but well, 4. One is to get some money directly in the hands of middle-class people. So there are a series of different tax cuts, things like that. Second is to create and preserve jobs. And so there is money to make sure that people, stay working, and new money for roads and bridges and things like that. And third, and this is the smallest part but important, and affects the North Country, although it's not what I came here to talk about, long-term infrastructure. It may not employ people directly, but we want our infrastructure to be better and stronger, so when, God willing, we get out of this recession, things will be better. So, for instance, they want a more efficient power grid that can bring power all over the country. And one part of that affects the North Country is they want every part of the country to have broadband. And here in the North Country, not so much here in Plattsburgh, but you go to the more rural areas, one of the great problems is that it's hard to get broadband. And there's $7 billion in there. They haven't figured out how they're going to spend it, but when they do, I'm sure Gary will call me up and we'll figure out a way to make sure a disproportionate share comes up here. In the job, what we're talking about today, though, is the job creating part, and not the infrastructure part. But it's keeping and preserving jobs. And when the economy goes south, as I'm sure Jim and the county legislators can tell you, revenues go down to state and local governments. Much of your revenue is sales tax, some is property tax, right? Sales tax goes down right away, and then property tax goes down as the home prices are down and the assessments are less. And if the federal government pumps money into the economy, but at the same time the state and local governments are taking money out of the economy by either raising taxes or laying off people, it doesn't accomplish very much. It's robbing Peter to pay Paul. And as big as the federal government is, the state and local governments are much bigger. And so in this proposal is help for state and local governments in a variety of ways. But the biggest one, far and away, is something called FMAP. FMAP is Medicaid relief. Now, Jimmy, what's percentage of the, I bet they have the numbers in here, I'm not reading the notes that my staff very carefully spent hours working on, so you always have to. Do you know what percentage of your budget is Medicaid? I'll bet it's your biggest number, right?
It's 62% of the property tax levy.
62%. My guess is it's similar in Essex County and Franklin County. It's a huge expense. Because here in New York State, we don't just, in 34 states, 33 states, the state picks up all the non-federal share. So if the feds is 50, the state is 50. But in New York, more than any other state, we in North Carolina, we make the counties pay for a good chunk of Medicaid, and it drives the counties crazy, because they have no say in how it's spent, they just have to spend it. And so it's 62% of tax levy here in Clinton County. And so the FMAP program says, well, the federal government is going to increase its share significantly, so you have to pay less. But usually the you is the state government only. And I wrote a provision into this law as a member of the Finance Committee, and I finally have some clout in Washington, I use it for you, that said the county money has to go directly to the county. So there will be none of this money taking a grant, and I'm sure Senator Dupree agrees with this, even though she's in Albany, and I'm sure Senator Little agrees, even though she's works in Albany too. But the money comes directly here. And the purpose is very simple. To have the county avoid either raising property taxes or dramatically cutting jobs. Neither would be very good at a difficult time. It's neither good at any time, But at a time of recession, it's particularly a bad thing to do. And so I'm here to say, to give you the numbers on what you're gonna get, which I think you'll be pretty happy with. Clinton County will get at least $9.47 million in Medicaid relief. Now, what's your county budget?
140 million.
Yeah, so there you go. 9 million out of 140 is a pretty nice chunk. What is so the Medicaid portion would be what, about 20 or 25?
16. Local is
16. 16. So this really helps. Now that's over 9 quarters, 2.25 years, but that means for the next, and it starts coming next month. So that means for the next 25 months, you will be getting the pro rata share of that amount, and it should really help you. For those of you who might have driven a little come north, in Essex County, they'll get 3.66 million. And for those who drove east to get here, for Franklin County, that will mean $5.45 million. So that's quite a bit of money for this nice place in New York State, this corner. And it's going to the money. So you understand, while it has to go directly to Medicaid, there's no specific part of Medicaid it has to go to. So it gives the counties money to spend as they wish, because you will have to put 9.47 million less of your tax levy in, and you can use that for whatever you choose. The hope is, number one, you won't have to raise property tax, because that's, as Gary said, the bane, not just here of Clinton County and of the North Country, but of the whole state. We have the highest property taxes in the state. And then second, it'll help you avoid the kind of massive layoffs that would really be devastating to what the county does. So that's the first part of what I want to talk about. Upstate New York, the counties, get a total of $929 million. I was over in Buffalo because of the horrible crash Monday night, and Chris Collins, the Erie County executive, said we were going to need about a 40% tax increase. They have a bigger Medicaid burden than you do, having the city of Buffalo, so only 4 people. Now we won't have to have one at all. So that's the kind of benefit that this has had, and as I said, the money goes directly to the counties. Totally, the counties, the 3 counties I talked about, I think have $43 million in Medicaid expenses. Franklin has a lot for its population. I don't know if they have to pay for the prisoners in there. You have to pay for Medicaid for down in Ward?
I think their median income is less than ours.
Yeah.
So they probably have a higher percentage.
Yeah, they probably have a higher percentage, they're reporting. So anyway, that's the good news, and there's a benefit to all of you here in Clinton County, which will reduce the need for either property tax increase or massive layoff. And the good news to the country is it'll have more people working with more money in their pockets, and hopefully that'll stimulate the economy and we'll get out of this mess. And with that, I'd like to call on Jim to come up and say a few words, and Jay as well. Yes. Great. Great.
It's always a pleasure to have the senator here. Chuck's been up here many times, many more times than his predecessor. I'm not supposed to say that, but.
What number time is it here?
I think it's 17.
17.
Yeah, it's going to get 13, so you beat him by about 16 or
Someone was just telling me, we were talking about the Air Force Base, I was telling one of my staff, that there was evidently a fight between Zulato and
Last
That was before my time. So no wonder he wasn't here.
The gates of the Air Force Base.
Well, he might have arrived a little late for the party, if you know what I mean.
Yeah. But now, just so person, there are more employees at the Air Force Base now private than there were in the day when it was a functioning base, which is a tribute again to all of you. Anyway, it's neither here nor there. Or it's not related. It's here and there, but it's not related.
Obviously, anytime somebody shows up and has at least 7 zeros, we're going to say thank you for that, and we certainly do. And of course, the senator understands the principles. It's obvious. We get caught up a lot in this upstate, downstate thing. Of course, he could be in Queens making announcements today, but he's here in the North Country. The bill was just signed yesterday by the president, as we all know. So I can't say any higher than just how appreciative we are that you're here today. Jay, of course, will talk about the actual numbers and so on. But, I haven't seen you in about a year or so, jump at the chance to stop and say hello and appreciate everything.
Thanks for the good
Thanks
job
a
you
lot.
do. How long now have you been chair of the legislature?
Too long.
About 5 years?
At
About
least
five?
My 8th year.
8th year?
Yeah.
Who was before you? That was my first year.
That would be Don Garrett.
Yeah, Don.
And Celine Paquette. And
Good afternoon. Thanks for the opportunity to say a few words. I know there are many measures used to judge the economy, the state of the economy. Because I work at the Department of Social Services, mine might be very different than any of yours is. I have my own gauges, and they mostly have to do with the working poor of Clinton County. At the end of January, our temporary assistance rolls were the highest they've been since June of 1998. They are still 60% of what they were in 1995, but they are growing at a significant rate. The number of individuals on food stamps at the end of January was over 9,000. Again, this is the largest number we've ever seen in Clinton County, and a 17% increase over last January. For the first time ever, in the month of December, we put out $1 million worth of food stamps, and we followed suit in January. Lastly, I use Medicaid as a gauge, and I'm not sure everybody understands the span of Medicaid. In Clinton County, there are now 14,000 people who get their health insurance from Medicaid or Family Health Plus through the Department of Social Services. That's 17% of our population. It's the largest number of enrollees we've ever had, and it's a double-digit increase since last December. I state these numbers not as a gloom and doom picture, but more to let you know the reality that this economy is having a dramatic effect on local government. There are a few states like New York where part of the cost of Medicaid is passed on to the counties, as the senator said. In New York counties, Medicaid is still the single biggest expense. We talked about it a little bit. The total levy for the county budget is property tax is $26 million. 16 million of that comes from my budget for Medicaid, 62%. So the county is running every department $150 million on $26 million property tax, which is commendable. But 16 million of that is Medicaid, 62%. I'm not here to bore you with numbers. I could probably do it all afternoon if I wanted to. I'm here on behalf of Clinton County to thank Senator Schumer for his tireless work on behalf of county governments. There's between $12 and $13 billion in increased federal Medicaid assistance coming to New York State in the stimulus package. Those of you who know me know I'm a political junkie. I have diligently followed the process of this act. I can say unequivocally that it was through the efforts of Senator Schumer that the federal language which protected counties was included in the act. This language results in approximately 30% of these increased federal dollars having to be passed down by states to the city and the counties. As Senator Schumer told you, that's millions of dollars for us. The money was intended to be part of a safety net and to be used to aid these struggling families through difficult times. That is what we will use it for. Otherwise, the burden would fall on all of us. So thank you, Senator Schumer, one more time for your relentless consideration of county governments and county taxpayers.
Now, while the stimulus bill and other things that the senator has been working on and continues to work on in Washington are part of getting us through this recession and out the other end and back to growth, this senator knows, I think better than many of his colleagues, that the best way going forward isn't just government action, it's continuing to work with the private sector. That's where prosperity really needs to be stimulated. That's where job growth and prosperity will return. And Akrimax Pharmaceuticals is a very, very key part of that here in the North Country. Just a little over a year ago, a number of us in this room gathered in the firehouse in Rouses Point, New York, with then the happiest mayor, to announce the consummation of a 2-year process to acquire most of the operations at Rouses Point that were due for phase out by Wyeth Pharmaceuticals by a couple of remarkable gentlemen, Len Mazier and Joe Kravolka, Akrimax Pharmaceuticals, to continue the longstanding legacy of manufacturing pharmaceuticals and doing a fine job of it here in the North Country. As we noted then, there aren't many examples you can think of out there where the impending closure of a major manufacturing facility in upstate New York with almost 800 union manufacturing jobs can be reversed. But it was reversed here, and it was reversed through the efforts of a lot, but first and foremost by the gentlemen who chose this location and put their entrepreneurial spirit and wherewithal behind this venture. However, it's still an ongoing journey. That was just the start of the journey when that announcement was made. We're in a transition, and the success of their original business plan always was and remains dependent on a number of factors. Being able to acquire and bring in products to produce there, once Wyeth finishes its transition out next year, and finances to help make that happen to the maximum degree possible during this transition period. And so as we have gone through this difficult economic time, it's a different environment than certainly was expected 14 months ago. And so assistance has been needed. We called upon our good senator once again on that vein and have made some significant withdrawals in recent months. Once again, he's been there in a couple of very substantive ways, and we're very pleased that he's with us here now to make a significant announcement about the continued progress of Akrimax Pharmaceuticals at Rouses Point.
Thank you, Gary. Thank you. And again, I want to thank Gary for the good work he did here. Of course, Joe Kravolka and Leonard Mazer and their whole management team. Thank you. Also, I do want to thank Senator Clinton, who was instrumental in bringing Akrimax here. We were a great team. I guess we still are, but she's far away. We're not on the Senate floor together. And she did a very good job, one that I will now continue to carry the torch for. Because as Gary said, private sector jobs are the best thing we can have. They really pump money into the economy. And a great, strong company that provides, fills a need, or several needs, in terms of health care around the world is just what we need to stay in Rouses Point. So today, we're all together announcing the creation of a new business that's going to continue the groundwork we're laying for growing the economy of the North Country, preserving existing jobs, building a platform for new ones. And this is a great area for people to come locate, for businesses to come locate. I think when people hear of Akrimax and their commitment, it's going to bring other people here. Actually, the job growth in this area exceeded most of New York State over the last several years. Of course, now we all have difficult times, but that was really terrific. Well, Rouses Point Pharmaceuticals, LLC, is a new generic and small brand pharmaceutical company selling nationally to chain, wholesale, and hospital customers, and it shipped its first product this week. And I spoke to Joe and Leonard, and they said early sales are above what they thought. And one of the reasons is it's made here in the USA, which is great, and we're going to spread that. That product, and I've always supported generic drugs, because I think that they both make it easier for people to get medication, and it's a great industry. In New York, we do a lot of this. We do a great deal. And the new drug, that product that the Rouses Point Pharmaceutical LLC is putting out is called propanolol. And I used to take organic chemistry, but I don't think I could draw it, but it's propane and something, right?
No smoking.
I I meant the CH, whatever it is, propane CH3, C3H8. Yeah, so that must be the base of this. So most of these chemicals are carbon and hydrogen and oxygen and other things thrown in. But in any case, propanolol began shipping this week under a manufacturing agreement with Akrimax, and we all know about Akrimax, in Rouses Point. And the company has hopes that the first year sales will be in excess of $20 million, which is a great input for Rouses Point and for the North Country. It's another milestone in the revitalization of the pharmaceutical plant in Rouses Point, which now provides 500 good-paying jobs. And as I said, all of us are working together, not only to preserve those 500, but God willing, if we're successful, to have the number go up. My office has assisted Akrimax, parent, by restarting its relationship with GE Capital and other lenders in the credit crunch. This is one of the jobs I'm asked to do now. As somebody in the Senate and somebody on the banking committee, we have companies all over New York State that are good companies but have a rough time getting credit because the banks are so frozen. And so we reached out to GE Capital, and we work with GE Capital all the time, and they ask us for stuff sometimes, and so we asked them for something, which when they looked at it, they were happy to do because this is a very viable, profitable, ongoing concern. And so GE Capital stepped up to the plate. They've restarted their talks with Akrimax, and are going to meet with the corporate leadership, I think it is next week. In addition, the minute I heard about the merger between Wyeth and Pfizer, I called the head of Pfizer. It's a New York company. I know Mr. Kindler, and they're acquiring Wyeth. And while the agreement between Akrimax and Wyeth had already been more or less worked out, I wanted to make sure that it would stay a smooth transition, that there would be no bumps in the road, that any way Pfizer could put a little extra in there, now Pfizer Wyeth, to make this transition as easy as possible for the North Country and for Akrimax. I wanted them to do it, and I got a very strong assurance from Mr. Kindler that he's with the program and on the team, that the new ownership of Wyeth, namely Pfizer, understands how important it is to have this transition to Akrimax, to make sure they don't try to get a certain advantage that will disadvantage us. And so I have told leaders of Akrimax, Joe and Leonard and their team, anytime there's any even sniff that something may not be going right in the transition, call me, and we will, again, make sure that they keep things going. So this is a prime example of how we can both begin to loosen the credit markets for the benefit of businesses and families throughout New York, and make sure even in these difficult times where companies merge and companies change, that we can keep our jobs and keep America moving forward. And so I was glad to play that role. I want to congratulate Akrimax and the new company, Rouses Point Pharmaceuticals, for their initial success in propranolol, and it's a long time since I took it again. I wasn't very good at it. And pledge my continued support to see that our Rouses Point transition remains a very good thing for the North Country. And with that, Joe, do you want to come up and say?
Thank you, sir.
Leonard?
So many times you look at politicians and you don't expect that, or you expect that they'll talk a good game but not deliver. That has clearly not been our experience up here with both Senator Clinton and now with Senator Schumer. It's amazing how quickly, after the announcement of Wyeth was made, that Senator Schumer had reached out to the Pfizer people, and then immediately Mr. Kindler reached out to us to assure us also that the transition would be smooth and that there were other opportunities that would come along with this. The same thing that has happened with GE. Just before the credit crisis started, we were in negotiations with GE to do a a financing that would help us expand and move the plant even further into the next phase of growth. And through the conversation that Senator Schumer had, within 24 hours, we received a contact from the GE people, and they've set up a meeting which we're having next Tuesday, I believe, Al. So it is this kind of help from the North Country and from the people that we have internally that have helped us move actually ahead of our schedule of transitioning into the plant. And in fact, I sat at a meeting last week where some 30 plus, because I don't want to say Mr. Champlain gets very upset when I say the exact number, but 30 plus projects are in Rouses Point being developed to be manufactured out. And that's happened in a 1-year period of time, which is extraordinary. Does not happen without excellent management inside of the old Wyeth Group, excellent management that we have with Alan Rubino and his group, and now also with the excellent management team. And I'm going to ask Alan to stand up, please, so that you can get a look at Alan is the president of Akrimax. And sitting right behind him is the recipient of this first product to be announced. Ben Maisel is the president of Rouses Point Pharmaceuticals.
Joe finally left something for me to say. If I go first, he always says, I've got nothing for him to say. That's what happens when you have a partnership. But I think what I'd like to echo here is that what we see here today is actually historical in some way, because there's a significant paradigm shift in the way America operates. And that is that we now really have a partnership with politicians, we have a partnership with our regulators, and we have a partnership with ourselves as business people. And this is something that you would never have seen a year ago, 5 years ago, 10 years ago. But today, it's become the operative paradigm, and I think that what's critical about that is that with the support of our politicians and of the administration here, what you're seeing is, for the very first time, probably, because all of you have probably seen on the news, all you see constantly is the cutbacks, employees being laid off, and so forth. And today, this is just the opposite news. This is about growth. This is about opportunities. This is about opportunities for people down the road. And what we would like to encourage, both Joe and myself, is that we're an example for not just for companies, but also for consumers and for everybody in our society to really start thinking the other way. Because once you start thinking the other way, part of this problem that we have today in our economy is largely psychological. And we've got to break that negative psychology that exists out there with positive actions, as you see here today. This is just one little step, but it's usually one little step that gets things going. So if others see this, others hear about it, hopefully what we'll have is the consumers also will start to think and react differently to the economic news that's been nothing but negative. So today, hopefully, this is the first piece of good economic news that can be broadcast throughout the media for others to see, for others to take encouragement from. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to Ben Maisel, who's now going to also provide you with a good overview as to what the plans are for Rouses Point Pharmaceuticals.
Thank you. Just 30 seconds on Rouses Point Pharmaceuticals. As Senator Schumer said, it is brand new. We launched this week with our first product made up here at the Rouses Point facility. We were thrilled. The reception in the marketplace was great. And we are a generic company, so it fits in with our goal, which is to bring more products up to this marketplace and manufacture at this plant. We have goals for a lot more than just 20 million over the next couple of years, and a lot more products to bring up. So it was great. I want to thank everybody, because it was wonderful to be able to bring stuff up to northern New York.
I'm going to ask Jan Dupree to offer a reaction, and then we'll open it up to some questions.
Thank you. I'm sitting here listening, and I expect that you will share with me my thought that it's so nice to be in a crowd where people are talking about politician as a term of endearment. And thank you.
Happens about once a year.
So let's relish it. I'm delighted to represent this tremendous 114th Assembly District, and you've brought great news across the board for my district of Franklin, Clinton, and Essex counties on the Medicaid issue. And I'm going to digress for just a second, but to share that for 31 years I was a county official. The last 21 as county treasurer, and certainly petitioned the state for the entire 31 years to take over Medicaid. And although I spend a lot more time in motel rooms now than I ever have, a big part of my heart is still with county government, and I thank you for your support on the Medicaid issue. But particularly today, I don't want to take anything away from the tremendous announcement of Akrimax and Rouses Point Pharmaceuticals and the great steps that have been taken forward, and how proud we are of the tremendous transition that is happening, and the boost that this is going to give to the entire North Country. With, once again, we have great news and a great announcement. Your recognition, Senator, certainly of the fact that we have a tremendous facility, very well run, in a dynamic village with a workforce that is absolutely second to none anywhere in the state of New York. And we appreciate your support. Thank you again.
Ready for any questions you all might have?
For the senator or for the county and
I think
friends
that
from Rouses Point?
the number one question probably for Mr. Maisel, actually, and that's how many jobs are we talking about here? If you meet your goal of bringing, as this release says, $100 million in the next 3 years, how many jobs could come here? Maybe you take the podium so our microphones can hear you too.
How many additional jobs?
Yeah, additional, yes.
It'll actually be up to these guys and how the plant runs. But
Can you please go to the microphone?
Oh, sorry.
Thank you.
You better go.
It's your turn.
I can't answer actually how many specific jobs, because I don't run the plant, but I can tell you that my goal over the next couple of years is, we just launched our first product, and I'm looking at least 10 or 12 more over the next 2 years. So it's not going to be 1 or 2.
I think it's a fair question. I think our first goal is to optimize fully the 500 plus employees that are there, and that's happening right now. And as Joe indicated, there's a number of projects over 30. As those get developed further, then commensurate with that, we'll be adding headcount to be able to take on those projects. But obviously, first goal is optimize and secure the 500 plus positions, and then add from there. So that's pretty much our game plan.
And what are these good paying jobs? Describe these jobs.
Yes, there are good paying jobs. I mean, I don't know what Tim is. What's the average salary right now, Tim? So what's the average salary right now for employee at Rouses Point? Yeah,
For the union workforce, it's around $50,000.
that's pretty good. That's pretty significant.
Or, excuse me, overall, the average is $50,000.
So I want to be very accurate for this particular location. So I think that is a significant, probably connection with all of the rest of the United States for these types of jobs.
What is the difference between Akrimax and Rouses Point Pharmaceuticals? What's the difference?
Akrimax is a fully integrated pharmaceutical company that focuses on metabolic diseases with a special concentration on metabolic syndrome. And if you hear who have diabetes and those types of diseases, we're focused on those therapeutic areas. We purchased the plant as well because that assists us in not only in our business development efforts of bringing in products, the fact that we can manufacture those products makes us very interesting to these other companies as well. Now, Rouses Point serves a whole nother market segment, and that is bringing high-quality, cost-effective, lower-cost drugs, which we usually call generics, into the marketplace. These are products that have enjoyed a long patent life, and we see what we can do to really make these very efficient. And so obviously we feel real good about that because the same quality of making our brand pharmaceuticals is also making generic pharmaceuticals.
So there'll be two companies operating out of the Rouses Point plant?
Yes, sir. That's correct. Well, we're actually, Akrimax is the parent, it's a separate entity, Rouses Point Pharmaceuticals. We'll work on a partnership and we will do their manufacturing.
Out of the same building, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
think there's a number of name brand drugs that are, you know, they're opening the marketplace now to competition, number one being Lipitor, is that
Yeah,
correct?
Lipitor, about 2011, I believe, is when the patent actually was up, and then there'll be different types of multiple generics will be out there, and obviously the Lipitor brand will come down, and of course the number, and it usually depends on how many companies come in, but it'll probably be a lot with Lipitor given the volume.
Let me just say, you know, a generic drug, what happens is pharmaceutical companies put a lot of time into research, it costs a lot of money, and for every one drug that works, they probably find a whole bunch that don't. So what we've provided for them in American society is a certain amount of time when they are the only ones who can produce that drug. After that, the drug comes on the market, and under certain rules I help write them, the generic comes out. And the generic is chemically exactly the same as the original brand drug. But because the patent is over and you know the company has reaped the rewards of its research, other companies can go ahead and make it. It's the fastest growing area of the drug market, and particularly the thing that Rouses Point is doing, which are the higher end generics, there's great opportunities. There are lots of different drugs whose patents will expire, not just Lipitor, in the next 3 or 4 years, and it'll be a tremendous opportunity. I told them anyway, since I'm sort of one of the congressional experts on this, anyway I can help them with these things through the regulatory process or whatever I would.
Well timed. What are you going to do better than Wyatt for your business?
Dave, I think you better step up. The last thing I want to do is bite the hand of a partner that has been just fantastic. As somebody pointed out earlier here today, too many stories are some plant or some business just goes out. Wyeth was planning that, but Wyeth had the foresight and the decency and the community commitment to work with Joe and Leonard to develop this company. So I feel very, very good about that, and I hope you do as well. So what will we do better? Nothing. We want to continue investment in developing.
Let me just say, I think what Mr. Rubino said is an important point. Too many companies, drug or otherwise, they leave and they just close down. And Wyeth went out of its way to find a good partner, to continue work here at the plant, different kind of work, but the same. And the point that I wanted to make to Mr. Kindler of Pfizer is, we simply want that same relationship to continue now that Wyeth has been taken over by Pfizer, and he assured me it would. But Wyeth deserves, I mean, obviously it would have been nice if they would have stayed. But you know, this is sort of a little model like the Plattsburgh Air Force Base. Change occurs, but if you're smart, like people in the North Country have been, you go with the change, and sometimes it ends up being even better, which is what's happened at Plattsburgh, and God willing will happen at Rouses Point.
Senator, I'm wondering if I could ask some things about the stimulus package. As you know, there was a bit of debate over it, with the Republicans all voting no on it.
Yeah.
What would you have liked to have seen get into the package that might have helped the counties even more that
Okay.
you weren't able to get into it?
First, you know, in the Senate, we took out most of those little items that really didn't belong in the stimulus, even though they might have been worthy. It's worthy to go after pandemic flu, or, you know, it's probably needed that you're going to have to redo the Washington Mall. It's a mess, but it didn't belong in the stimulus package. And so we took most of those out. This is a very good package, and I'm quite pleased with it. There were a few places where we might have done a little better. I would have liked, doesn't really affect you so much, although it would affect the city of Plattsburgh in terms of buses. But a little more for mass transit. It's a little low in that area. There was a debate whether something I've always supported and voted for, the AMT, which is the adjusted minimum tax, which affects a lot of middle-class people unfairly. Now, the adjustment to prevent it from getting any worse was put in this bill. Some people thought it didn't really belong in a stimulus bill, but it stayed in. So, you know, there were changes I would make here and there. But overall, and this is an interesting point, New York did very well in this bill. Senator Moynihan, who was my mentor, always talked about how New York got shortchanged. In other words, we sent far more money to Washington than we got back. This is the first large bill in a long time where New York State as a whole, and the North Country as well, gets a lot more back than we put in. It happened in the transportation bill a year or two ago. It's now happened in this, and let's hope that's a new good trend.
Senator, can I just switch subjects to see if I can get you to comment on some news of the day? Governor Patterson has come under fire from the employees unions who are saying that he gave some of his inner circle raises in a time when he's asking people to take cuts. Can I get you to comment on that?
Well, these are tough times for everybody, and there does have to be shared sacrifice. There's no question about that. That's what we're telling all these Wall Street executives, you know. Guy works on the assembly line, or a gal works at the desk, makes no mistakes, and they're suffering. They may have a furlough, they may get laid off. Why don't the Wall Street people? So I think they're going to have to be shared sacrifice. I wouldn't get into the details of what Governor Patterson should or shouldn't do on this, but I do think the general principle is, if you're asking some people to sacrifice, you can't exempt others.
What are your early impressions of your new colleague, Senator Gillibrand, who's no stranger to this area?
Right. Well, I guess she represented Essex County, but not Clinton County.
Very, very good friend.
Pardon?
She's been a very good friend.
Yeah, well, let me just say this. One of the things I said, I did not, you know, there were talk that I told Governor Patterson I thought this person should be the choice, this or that. I didn't. But I weighed the pros and cons. And I told him, here are some things we should do. And at the top of my list was getting a representative from upstate New York. When you have six major statewide officials, 4 governor, lieutenant governor, attorney general, and controller, and 2 senators, to have none from upstate is unfair. You know, upstate has 42% of the population. You take out not just New York City, but all the surrounding suburbs. Upstate has 42% of the population. Upstate would be, as a separate state, the 6th or 7th largest in the country. We have the 3rd largest rural, New York State has the 3rd largest rural population in the country. People don't know that. And so it was only fair to have someone from upstate. I'm glad the governor picked someone from upstate. I like Kirsten Gillibrand. I was very positive about her. As I said, I didn't say pick this one over that one, but I gave the governor what I thought were the pros and cons, and I was very, very positive about her. She's a hard worker. She's a get something done type person, and I'm working with her. As you know, I hope to have the same kind of good partnership with Kirsten Gillibrand that I have with Senator Clinton. Okay. Well, thank you all very much, and let's hope we have many more. Economy ourselves, my staff and I, by going to McSweeney's.